This week, we get a different view of the Pope's meeting with Patriarch Kirill. It's the end of an era at Vatican Radio, and we look at the Church's call for a death penalty moratorium. Hello and welcome to this edition of Vatican Connections. Let's take a look at what's been going on this week. On February 29th, Cardinal George Pell, the head of the Vatican Secretariat for the Economy, will testify before an Australian royal inquiry into how institutions handled sex abuse allegations in Australia. Cardinal Pell has a heart condition that prevents him from flying to Australia, so he will testify via video link. A group of Australian abuse survivors will fly to Rome to be present when he testifies. But this week, the whole situation took an unpleasant turn. An Australian newspaper reported that the Victoria Police have been investigating abuse allegations against Cardinal Pell himself. According to the report, the allegations go back as far as 1961 and involve between 5 and 10 boys. The Victoria Police refused to comment, but Cardinal Pell has now asked for an investigation into who leaked the details of the investigation to the press. Pope Francis's meeting with Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill on February 12th was historic, but it also surfaced some mixed emotions, mainly because one of the stumbling blocks in that dialogue has been the existence of the Ukrainian Catholic Church. Catholic News Service spoke to Ukrainian Catholic Metropolitan Sviatoslav about the positive signs and the challenges that this renewed relationship faces.
When I have received a news about upcoming meeting with His Holiness Pope Francis and Patriarch Kirill, my spontaneous exclamation was finally. And I was so pleased that Pope Francis repeated almost the same when he embraced Patriarch Kirill. And I think that that very gesture is sacred. We're supposed to meet, we're supposed to talk, but that meeting, it's only a tool, routine, in order to start true, sincere dialogue. But the joint declaration, which was made, a big document with so many not clear statements, was problematic was the temptation to instrumentalize a holy, sacred issue of ecumenism for the political proposals. Especially those paragraphs who are judging the situation in Ukraine almost an inner civil conflict. And also some sort of not clear statement on the identity of the Eastern Catholic churches, because those churches were called simply the Christian communities. That diversity of terminology is very, very difficult to understand, because in the ecumenical discussions, those communities who are not preserved the apostolic succession, supposed to be called Christian communities. But we are churches, sui juris churches. We consider both the Eastern Catholic Orthodox spiritual liturgical tradition, but we are in full communion with the successor of Peter. We profess that being Eastern and being in communion with Rome is nothing wrong. That communion preserves us from the provincialism, very, very narrow nationalism, and opens us to the real, open, ecumenical dialogue. Being Catholics today means being ecumenical one. Even for His Holiness Pope Francis, that document is not the Word of God. It is not a page of the Holy Gospel, but this is rather some issue of the further discussions. I think that meeting and that declaration is only the beginning of the true, sincere dialogue. It is good to be united because of so many common challenges in today's world. But I think that true, real ecumenism is a search for unity in the name of one God, not one enemy.
After that historic meeting with Patriarch Kirill, Pope Francis went on to visit Mexico, and at the end of that trip, Pope Francis spent about an hour answering questions from the journalists traveling with him. He was asked about a wide range of things, including sex abuse, the U.S. election, the Zika virus and the use of contraception, divorced and remarried Catholics, and what language he dreams in. Here are some of the highlights of what he had to say. On sex abuse, the Pope said, quote, "A bishop who moves a priest from a parish when he discovers the priest is a pedophile is without conscience, and the best thing for him to do would be to resign." Clear? Asked about the U.S. election and Donald Trump's statements that the Pope is political, the Holy Father said, "Thanks be to God I'm political. Aristotle defines the human as animal politicus." And then he went on to say those now famous words, "A person who thinks only of building walls wherever they may be and not of building bridges is not a Christian. This is not the gospel." On the issue of divorced and remarried Catholics, he said integration into the Church does not mean going to communion. This is a view of communion, it's almost like looking at it as some sort of honorific title. But allowing remarried Catholics to receive communion, that is, decreeing that now they can, would not necessarily mean that they were actually integrated into the Church. Now, the press conference ended with a light-hearted question. The Pope was asked if he dreams in Italian or Spanish, and he replied, "It could be said I dream in Esperanto." Then he added, "I don't really dream in language, I dream in figures. That's just my psychology." Now, the Pope's words made headlines again back in Rome. While leading the Angelus, he called for a moratorium on carrying out death sentences during the Jubilee Year. We'll be talking to someone from the Sant'Egidio community, the lay Catholic community at the forefront of the campaign to end the death penalty. But first, here's a look at what Francis had to say.
Il comandamento non uccidere ha valore assoluto, riguarda sia l'innocente che il colpevole. Faccio appello alla coscienza dei governanti affinché si giunga ad un consenso internazionale per l'abolizione della pena di morte e propongo a quanti tra loro sono cattolici di compiere un gesto coraggioso ed esemplare, che nessuna condanna venga eseguita in questo anno santo della misericordia.
The Sant'Egidio community is a Rome-based lay community, Catholic lay community, that started out with a soup kitchen and other social service projects in the Eternal City. It has since expanded greatly and has been involved even in mediating disputes in Africa and Eastern Europe. One of Sant'Egidio's long-term projects is a campaign to end the death penalty around the world. Joining me is Danny Clark. She is a layperson involved in the community's efforts to end the death penalty, based in Washington, D.C. Danny, thank you for joining us. The Sant'Egidio community has been working to end the death penalty for some time, and it goes way beyond a media campaign. Tell us about your work against corporal punishment.
Yeah, the community of Sant'Egidio has been involved in the fight against the death penalty globally for about 20 years now. And I would say our work, it could be divided into two different areas. And one is public awareness and campaigns like the Cities for Life initiative, which we promote and has 2,000 cities every year, November 30th, lighting up a monument in support of life. We have participated and spearheaded in a way, together with the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty, the gathering of signatures for the UN moratorium on the death penalty, which passed in 2007. And we do a lot of public awareness in this way. But the other part of our work, which is probably the basis of it and the real spirit of it, is friendship and dialogue and encounter. This work on the issue of the death penalty started with friendships between members of the community and people in prison, people condemned to die. We have a letter writing campaign, and many members of the community, including myself, who have befriended people who are condemned to die, not just in the United States where I am, all over the world. And it's this spirit of friendship and dialogue which is really at the heart of our work to see a world someday free of the death penalty.
So you yourself are friends with a person who's on death row?
I am friends with one person who I've been writing to for 11 years. His name is Ivan Cantu, and he is on death row in Texas. And it has been one of the most meaningful experiences of my life to maintain that friendship and stand by him.
And what has this friendship taught you?
After 11 years of writing to him, I actually just went to the prison this summer to visit him for the first time in Texas. And it was a real pilgrimage for me to go there. I had never been to a prison in the first place. So that was very eye-opening. But just seeing him there and talking to him in person really brought home the sense to me that it may not be, I am not him, but I could be him. He is a person like I am, and he has wounds like I do. And so this connection between he and I is probably one of the most important things in my life, and really taught me, or has, as I said, brought home this sense of the importance of one-on-one connection and encounter with the other, with the unexpected other. It would not be quote unquote normal for someone like me to be visiting someone on death row. And yet through the community, I've had the opportunity to open my heart in this way and get to know someone that is suffering in a very specific way. That is just, I could go on and on about it.
Right. Now, Pope Francis has some very clear words about the death penalty during his last Angelus. As someone who's working to end the death penalty, what was your reaction and what impact do you think those words will have globally and in the United States?
We agree with him, and we have great hope that all leaders, any leader, will take up this call to end the death penalty, and specifically in this year of mercy to declare a moratorium on executions, to suspend executions. We have a handful of Catholic governors in the United States, of states where the death penalty is still on the books, and we call on them to suspend executions this year, during this year of mercy.
Now, abolishing the death penalty is long-term work. What are some of the challenges that still lie ahead, and where have you seen signs of hope?
There are so many signs of hope. Globally, the death penalty is on the decline. I can share with you that, for example, in 1988, 78% of countries worldwide had the death penalty on the book. Now it's about 25% of countries. So there has been this really sweeping movement, especially in the last 25 years, of countries abolishing this practice. We know that Europe is death penalty free, has been for a while. Africa, we are very hopeful that Africa will soon be the second continent in the world to not have the death penalty anymore in any of those countries. Even in my country, in the United States, there is a lot of hope with the activists that Sant'Egidio partners with, organizations like Witness to Innocence and Journey of Hope, that we will, in our lifetime, see the end of the death penalty in our country. The public discourse in the media is very active on this issue and reporting on the things like botched executions, the arbitrariness of the death penalty, racism involved in it, its ineffectiveness. This is very much in the public discourse here in the US, and we do have great hope. I would recommend, we have a prominent member of Italian Parliament who actually happens to be a member of Sant'Egidio, who wrote a great book, if you don't mind showing it to you, for anyone who's interested in the global movement and the death penalty, Sant'Egidio's participation in it, but also all the partners and other organizations that have come together and have been coming together these last years to end the death penalty. It's called 13 Ways of Looking at the Death Penalty, and it really broadens, at least it broadened for me who live in the United States, this issue. And we really see hope that, like the way that humanity abolished slavery, a very concrete way in the 1800s, that the death penalty will also be abolished. But as far as challenges, we live in times of great fear and terror, and we recognize that with that, there is a very natural human inclination toward revenge, toward retribution, vendetta.
Thank you, Danny, for making time for us. That was Danny Clark. She is an advocate with the Sant'Egidio community in Washington, D.C., working to end the death penalty around the world. Let's take a look now at what Pope Francis has been doing this week. Well, he got back from Mexico, and on Monday, Pope Francis celebrated the Feast of the Chair of St. Peter the Apostle with a Mass for Vatican and Holy See employees. Catholic News Service has more.
La festa liturgica della cattedra di San Pietro ci vede raccolti per celebrare il Giubileo della Misericordia come comunità di servizio della Curia Romana, del Governatorato e delle istituzioni collegate con la Santa Sede. Abbiamo attraversato la Porta Santa e siamo giunti alla tomba dell'Apostolo Pietro per fare la nostra professione di fede. Siamo chiamati ad essere i collaboratori di Dio in un'impresa così fondamentale e unica come quella di testimoniare con la nostra esistenza la forza della grazia che trasforma e la potenza dello Spirito che rinnova. Lasciamo che il Signore ci liberi da ogni tentazione che allontana dall'essenziale della nostra missione e riscopriamo la bellezza di professare la fede nel Signore Gesù.
Tuesday seems to have been a much-needed rest day, or at least a day working out of the public eye. Pope Francis did, however, celebrate Mass in the chapel of the Casa Santa Marta. And Wednesday was the general audience. This week, the Holy Father focused on the correct use of power and wealth. Catholic News Service has more.
la ricchezza e il potere sono realtà che possono essere buone e utili al bene comune, se messe al servizio dei poveri e di tutti, con giustizia e carità. Ma quando, come troppo spesso avviene, vengono vissute come privilegio, con egoismo e prepotenza, si trasformano in strumenti di corruzione e morte. È la storia della tratta delle persone, del lavoro schiavo, della povera gente che lavora in nero e con il minimo per arricchire ai potenti. È la storia dei politici corrotti che vogliono più e più e più. Gesù Cristo è il vero Re, ma il suo potere è completamente diverso. Il suo trono è la croce. Lui non è un re che uccide, ma al contrario, dà la vita. Il suo andare verso tutti, soprattutto i più deboli, sconfigge la solitudine e il destino di morte a cui conduce il peccato. Gesù Cristo, con la sua vicinanza e tenerezza, porta i peccatori nello spazio della grazia e del perdono. E questa è la misericordia di Dio.
On Friday, Pope Francis and the Roman Curia took part in the second meditation for Lent. It was preached by Father Raniero Cantalamessa, the preacher of the papal household. In the afternoon, Pope Francis met with participants of the International Congress hosted by the Pontifical Council Cor Unum. The Congress was held to study the papal encyclical Deus Caritas Est on the 10th anniversary of its release. Not many resignations and nominations this week, but there was one that is quite notable. Let's take a look. There were changes to Vatican Radio this week. Father Federico Lombardi is retiring as head of that radio station. He has served as Director General of Radio Vaticana since 1990. An Italian layman, Giacomo Ghisani, will act as director on an interim basis. Now, Ghisani was already Director of International Relations and Legal Affairs for Vatican Radio for many years, and he is currently the Vice Director of the new Secretariat for Communication. This move is all part of a slowly unfolding plan to streamline the Vatican's media operations. As for Father Lombardi, he will continue to serve as Director of the Holy See Press Office and as the Vatican spokesperson. However, he is 73 years old and he is nearing the mandatory retirement age, and sources tell me he's not unhappy about that mandatory retirement. That's all for this edition of Vatican Connections. We're on hiatus next week, but we'll be back with you Friday, March 11th. Until then, follow us on Twitter, read our blog for updates, or watch us on demand on Roku TV. From everyone here, thanks for watching. See you next time.